I'm going to record.
All right. And I'm not going to go full screen on the presentation because if I do, for whatever reason, my cursor disappears. So if everybody's happy with this view, we will proceed. And hold on a second. Somebody's trying to break into my office. See, there you go. Come here. Come here. Come here. See, we've been on the call for how long? 35 minutes, and all of a sudden, one of the 2-year-olds pop in.
Hey,
Say hi.
cutie.
Say hi. Wave. Say hi. This is Khalil. His sister's downstairs somewhere, but go back with mommy. Never fails. Never fails. That's okay. All right, we're good. Okay. You've all seen that video came out right after the pandemic happened where the guy was doing the news story and his kid rolled into the room and then the mom jumped in and grabbed the kid and it was a whole deal. That's pretty much my life. That's pretty much my life.
The joys of virtual
Zoom. I'm telling you, which we will talk about as well. All right. So how not to embarrass yourself in front of your boss. Okay. Let's go here. There we go. All right. So here's what we're going to talk about today. Right. So this is just, again, an outline of some things that I think you should know. Right. So why is this topic important? A few things you should know. So kind of the basics, etiquette, chain of command, virtual meeting basics, reading the room, preparation, and what I call the rock star timeline. All right. So why is this topic important? Well, when I was doing research on Generation Z and Generation Y, it all comes down to technology and the infiltration of technology into our personal lives that have affected how we can effectively develop our interpersonal skills as well as our people skills. So this guy, Dan Schwerble, who is a columnist for the New York Times, based on his research, he says this: when asked, just over a third of Gen Zs admit that technology has weakened their ability to maintain strong interpersonal relationships and develop people skills. So how many of you can identify with that statement? You've grown up with technology, you've grown up with social media, you've grown up with a phone. How can you explain to me how you feel like that has affected you, right? So I want you to hold that answer. We're going to watch a fun video really quick. It's about 2 minutes long. And then when we come back from watching that video, we're going to answer that question. Okay, so that question again is, how has technology impacted the way that you develop your relationships? Okay, so let's pull up our video here. Here, okay. We got to watch a commercial first. Hold on a second. All right, there we go. Where'd it go? Here we go.
Lindor, made to melt you this Valentine's Day by the Lindt Master Chocolatier.
Oh, 2 commercials. Ready? YouTube never fails.
Manage you to, on a more personal scale, a more micro form of management. Jim, what is that called?
Microagement.
Boom. Yes. Now, Jim is going to be the client. Dwight, you're going to have to sell to him without being aggressive, hostile, or difficult. Let's go.
All right, fine. Ring, ring. Hello? Hello, this is Dwight Schrute from the Dunder Mifflin Paper Company. That's great, because I need paper. Excellent, then you're in luck, because we are having a limited time offer only on everything.
Wow, this is my lucky day.
Ask him his name.
What is your name, sir?
I am Bill Buttlicker.
Really, that's your real name?
How dare you? My family built this country, by the way.
Be respectful, Dwight, please.
Yes, Michael.
Could you hold on 1 second? That's my other line.
What? No, but I...
Hello? Yeah. No, I'm just on the phone with this stupid salesman. He's so dumb. Probably just gonna keep him on the line forever and not buy anything. Okay.
It's up to you to change his mind.
Sorry, that was Family emergency.
Oh no, what's wrong?
You know what? That's private.
Boundaries, Dwight, come on.
I'm sorry, Mr. Butler. As I was saying,
Son,
we're
you
having
just
a
have to
limited...
Speak up a little bit louder. I'm hard of hearing.
He's hard if he's an old man.
Okay, as I was saying, right now we are having...
Talk louder.
Okay, our prices have never been lower.
Son, you have to talk louder.
Never been lower.
Louder, son!
Butler! Our prices have never been lower!
Okay, stop it. That is totally inappropriate. You never yell at the client. You
Now,
never
you listen
yell
to
at the
me,
client.
sir.
Here we go.
The 3 words I would describe you as is aggressive,
Yes.
hostile, and definitely difficult.
Give me the
Please,
phone.
Mr.
Give
Butler.
me the
I'm
phone.
irate right
Give
now.
me the phone.
Please give me
He's
another
irate.
chance.
Give me the phone.
Mr. Butler.
Give me the phone.
I have to put you on with my boss.
Well, I should hope so. Who is this?
Hello, this is Michael Scott, Regional Manager.
Well, this is William M. Buttlicker.
Hello, Mr. Buttlicker. How may we help you?
Michael, I like the sound of your voice. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy $1 million worth of paper products today.
See how it's done? Thank you very much, sir. I don't think you'll regret it. See what I did?
You're the master.
There is one condition, Michael.
Yes.
You have to fire the salesman that treated me so terribly.
Don't do it, Michael.
It's $1 million sale.
So, as we can see, that is a way to definitely embarrass yourself in front of your boss. Does anybody watch the show The Office?
Yes.
Okay, so you already know about Dwight Schrute and the relationship that he has with Michael and Jim. That show is hilarious in the fact that it tells you everything not to do in the workplace, which is why I watch it most of the time. So let's jump back into the presentation here. All right. Okay, so before we answer that question, here we go. Is it really your fault? So there's really 3 things or 3 different schools of thought, I guess, when it comes to social skills and Generation Z. So the first is they're a product of their environment, right? So people just assume the Generation Z, Generation Y does not know how to communicate because we grew up with technology. B is they've made a choice to keep to themselves. For whatever reason, studies have shown that there are more people that identify with being introverted in Generation Z than any other generation in the past. Most people attribute that to technology. Some people say it's a choice. And then C is they give no effort to exercise their social skills. A lot of times it was much easier as children or teenagers to play video games, have your head down in your phone, or just not talk to people. I was a youth pastor for about 7 years. I was over the youth group at our church. And I noticed a pattern as time went on, where I would get different groups of students. And for whatever reason, the last couple of groups were very antisocial, for lack of a better term. They were in a situation always where they just didn't want to talk to each other. They just didn't want to interact, right? So I kind of noticed that pattern. And technology obviously was one of the contributors. Either way, the advantage is with those who avoid excuses, make a choice to put forth effort. Those who do this stand out from the crowd. Basically, what that means is when you're in situations in your workplaces where nobody's speaking up, nobody's communicating, just a simple circumstance where you express your thoughts in a meeting or you express your thoughts on a video call is actually going to put you ahead of the crowd and help you stand out. Right. So those who put forth the effort to develop their personal skills and their communication skills are going to be the ones that stand out. So here we go. 2-minute drill. And this is the first one. And we'll take everybody off of mute and we'll have everyone answer the question. How can you make an effort to improve your people skills? How can you make an effort to improve your people skills? We'll start with Shayla. You could probably hear my kids too, but
how can I make an effort? Excuse me. I think for me, I struggle with, I've always been kind of a shy and reserved person. So kind of telling myself that, there's never going to be an instance where whomever I'm speaking to is like, going to be rude or mean. That's something I kind of like internalize myself. So just like get out of my own head and just maybe take the first step to initiate, conversation, just break the ice.
That's really good. So what I'm hearing you say is basically that one of your biggest hurdles in developing or improving your people skills is just yourself, right? It's just really getting over the fact of the what if. Man, what if I say something silly, or what if the person doesn't understand me? Or okay, that's great to get out of your own head. I really like that. Jillian?
I've been like this year specifically, I've been volunteering for more organizations and stuff like that. So I like have to force myself to talk to people.
Good.
So that's just one way I've been like trying to improve my people skills.
That's really good. Did you find that talking to new people and hosting conversations, did you find that difficult before you started joining the groups?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That's great.
Really
So that's wonderful. So you intentionally put yourself in circumstances and environments where you had to communicate, and you have been able to improve your people skills just by placing yourself in unfamiliar situations.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Claire?
I need to stop observing so much people, because I seem to spend a lot longer than I should observing the people that I'm around before I jump into a conversation. And then
you kind of overthink it a little bit.
Yeah.
Wow. And, I think I might have had the same issue trying to read the room a little too much, right? So there's reading the room, and then there's studying the room. And I think we get in situations where we can study the room and it gives us analysis paralysis, meaning that we are trying to understand something so much and so intently that we forget why we're there, and we never actually execute on the whole idea, right? So I can definitely identify with you on that. Here's some practical things, right? Just some things to consider as we jump into the meat of our conversation. Just a few things that you should know. No particular order. This is one of the most important slides. So if you're taking notes or if you're screenshotting, now's a good time to do that. Every employee-employer relationship has a value balance. The balance changes as you progress in your role. Here's what that means. Your employer pays you to do a function or a job or a collection of responsibilities. Your employer has placed a value on the results of what they need you to do. All right. When you first come in the door, the value balance is tilted in your direction, meaning you are getting paid under the assumption that over time, you will figure out how to do your role and your function well. Because when you come in the door, you really don't know what to do. And they really don't really know if you're going to perform at a high level. So the balance is out of balance. You're almost ripping them off, right? You're almost in a situation where you're getting a deal because you really don't know what your job is. You haven't really performed yet, but yet they're still paying you. Over time, as you get better and better and better at that job, the balance starts to equalize. And the result that you're giving your employer is equal to your paycheck. But even so, as you get better and more efficient at your job, you are going to find yourself in situations where you don't feel like you're getting paid enough, right? And understanding that value balance is going to carry you through your career in a sense of when the value balance gets out of alignment to a certain degree, that's typically when it's time to start looking for the next role, whether it's promotion internally or whether you promote yourself to a new position at a new company. But you have to always be cognizant of that value balance. Now, the same thing holds true. If the value balance never changes and your employer is paying you more than your function and your results are worth, eventually they're going to get to a point where they're going to look at you and say, you're not meeting expectations. We need to find somebody else. So always be cognizant of the value balance, okay? Influence increases over time and results. The best thing that you can have in your position, believe it or not, is influence. When you have influence within your company, your department, your team, that sets you apart, and that sets you up for promotion and sets you up for additional opportunities. You're not technically, or most of the time, going to have influence walking in the door, meaning your first day, week, month, year on the job, you're probably not going to have much influence. But over time or tenure, plus positive results in your function, you will gain that influence. So that's what I want you to look forward to. That's what I want you to chase. I don't want you to chase a paycheck. I don't necessarily want you to chase accolades and awards. I want you to chase influence, right? Because influence will get you all the other things that you're looking for. Professional social capital is hard to build and easy to destroy. Professional social capital is simply your reputation. Your reputation is very difficult to build. That also takes time and positive results, right? However, it's very easy to destroy. We see occurrences in the news every single day of individuals either in companies or in high-level positions in leadership who have built huge reputations over decades, and they do one bad thing or a scandal comes out and everything is destroyed that quick. So as you go through your career, be aware that the decisions and choices you make, even outside and away from your job and your company, can aid in destroying your reputation. All right. So just try to keep it clean. And I don't think I have to talk that much to you guys about that. Just because you're in this program tells me that you care. Failures equal assets. Just like I said before, the intention of the School of Hard Knocks is to make sure that you learn from every situation. Every failure is like a chapter in a book. Every time you fail, every time you don't meet an expectation, every time you don't hit the mark, you should capture that feeling, capture that moment, capture those notes, right, on what you can do better next time, and you put it on the shelf just like a book. And when that situation comes back around, you pull that book off the shelf, you open it up, and you read how you felt and what happened the last time you went to that scenario, or you share that failure in that lesson with someone else who's going through that scenario, and your failures become your assets. Those are the things, again, that are going to set you apart, is learning from your mistakes. Last but not least, not all managers are leaders and not all leaders are managers. So the difference between a leader and a manager, can someone tell me the difference between a leader and a manager? And feel free to jump off of mute and just jump in. Leader and manager, what's the difference?
So I would say a leader is someone who more provides guidance and inspiration and encourages you to get there, whereas managers are more like the micromanaging that they mentioned. Like they're just like, they're not trusting you to do your job.
Okay, so first thing, I like your answer. The only thing I will caution you to say is that just because you're not a leader and you're a manager doesn't necessarily have a negative connotation, right? There are good managers, even though they may not be leaders naturally, they're still good managers. Here's the way that I've boiled this down. Managers focus on process. Leaders focus on people. Okay, so managers focus on process, meaning the task at hand, the process, the protocols, the result. A leader focuses on the people that are actually carrying out the mission. The good news is when you focus on the people usually take care of you, right? So you focus on your team, you focus on the well-being of your team, you focus on the needs and concerns of your team will take care of you. In the positions that you guys are going into at this stage in your careers, you're gonna find that as you work for different individuals, again, that not all managers are good leaders and not all leaders are good managers. Sometimes you can focus on the people too much and not be able to carry out the mission. There's a balance between the two, right? So understanding your managers or your boss's leadership style is gonna be critical in going through the different aspects of not embarrassing yourself, right? So practical tip number one, this is a fun one. And I made this mistake. I was just telling Taikia and Angie before you guys got on the phone. If you go to lunch with your boss or your coworkers, try to order food that's eaten with a fork versus your fingers. Now you might ask why, right? And I told them this story. I said, hey guys, you go to a restaurant at lunchtime, you're probably very hungry. You're probably looking forward to that meal. What you don't want to do is what I did the first time I went out with my boss and coworkers, which was order chicken wings, right? I love chicken wings. That's like my love language, and that's one of my favorite foods. Where the chicken wings were so delicious and the fries, I'm dipping them in the ketchup. I got sauce all over my face. My fingers are all greasy. You know, I want to lick my fingers because the sauce is good. But then again, you get to the situation where you're like, that's nasty. Like this is supposed to be a professional lunch. So from there on out, I told myself I'm only gonna order food that you eat with a fork, right? A pork chop, a chicken breast, something like that, right? A salad, something that's a little more neat to eat. Okay. Wow. Can you guys hear my kids? Hold on 1 second.
No, I can't hear them.
They are off the hook. Okay. So some of the basics of good workplace etiquette. Under promise and over deliver. Can anyone tell me what that means? Under promise and over deliver. Okay, does anybody know what over promise and under deliver means? So when we say under promise, go ahead.
I don't know if I would use under promise, but I believe it's being realistic about whatever it is that you're saying that you can deliver. So that way the expectations are very clear and the person knows or understands that, okay, this is what I'm able to receive based off of these types of resources. And this is what the person's going to give to me.
So here's why I use the term under promise, right? A lot of times when it comes to your career and the task that you have, you're going to want to impress your manager or the person that you're doing the task for. And naturally, you're going to want to say that you can give them the world, when the reality is, as you move through the process, you're going to discover that most companies don't always have all of the resources readily available that you need to be able to deliver the world, right? So when I say under promise, what I mean is manage expectations. Okay, manage expectations. For example, if your manager says, hey, I need you to do a report, and let's say the report's going to come out to be 16 hours worth of work and it's going to be 30 pages. It's going to be a report on something. Let's say it's a sales report for the last 2 years. If your manager says, when can you have that back to me? In your mind, you know you can get it back in 10 business days. When I say under promise, tell them 14 business days and maybe get it back in 10, but give yourself a buffer. All I'm saying is manage expectations, okay? Manage expectations. Be impeccable with your words. Being impeccable with your words means choose your words carefully and use the least amount of words as possible. Right? This may sound, again, philosophical, but I've been in many situations where people talk themselves into a corner or they talk themselves into an impossible situation. I'll give you an example. I was in a quarterly business review with the entire company, and my director was standing at the podium and he was talking directly to the executives, and he told the executives that if you give me, this is what he said. He said, if you give me one demo unit of a video wall, I can get you results sales wise. He said, I can get you results. He got into a back and forth with the CEO about those actual results. And by the end of the conversation, my manager, not being impeccable with his words, talked himself into $10 million worth of sales based on having one demo unit of video wall, which is completely unrealistic, right? He got himself into that situation because he kept talking. Next one, always arrive and meet deadlines on time. always arrive. I think that is pretty simple, right? Always show up to work on time. Shayla, if you are supposed to be to work at your desk by 9 a.m., what time should you arrive to the building?
Arrive to the building, I would say maybe like 8:40. Depending on how many stairs, maybe 8:35.
Yeah, you got it. Depend on how many stairs. Depend on if you want hot coffee. Depend on if you need to go into the bathroom before. Right. It depends on those things. Only you know. But again, you want to give yourself a buffer. Right. So 8:40, 8:45. Find a nice parking space. Roll into the building. Be at your desk and ready to work or receive phone calls at 9 a.m. I think that's absolutely perfect because work starts at 9. Don't get to the parking garage at 9. Because by the time you get in the building, you'll be late, right? Again, I feel like that's very practical. Next one is don't overshare. You're going to spend more time at work with the people you work with than the people that you live with, which means that you are going to be in situations and circumstances where you're going to be having personal conversations a lot of times with these people. Maybe over lunch, maybe at the proverbial water cooler, but you're going to have personal conversations. It has been my experience that oversharing too soon can put you in difficult situations, difficult circumstances. Can anybody give me an example of oversharing? Let's see. Claire, can you give me an example of oversharing?
At my current job, when I first started, there was someone who was talking very openly about their bowel issues to me. And I was like, this is my 4th day here.
That is perfect. Often use the term TMI, right? Too much oversharing. Don't be that guy. Don't be that girl. Don't be that person that overshares. Okay. Again, if you develop a personal relationship with somebody you work with and you feel like that's a safe space, by all means. However, especially with your boss, be impeccable with your words and be careful what you tell them, just to be honest. Learn your boss's behavioral tendencies. This goes back to the DISC assessment. Is your boss a high D? Are they dominant? Are they domineering? Are they task oriented? Is it all about results? Is your boss a high I? Is your boss someone like me who is a people person, the life of the party? It's all about taking care of people, making sure people are okay. Is your boss a high S? Are they more supportive, right? Are they kind of quiet? Is your boss a high C? Are they philosophical? Are they complex? Are they strategy driven? You want to try to understand what your boss's behavioral tendencies are, because not only can you better communicate with them, you can deliver results in the form and fashion that they can most interpret effectively. Ask questions for clarity and direction. By all means, if you don't know what to do, don't do it, right? If you don't know what to do, if you're not clear on what your boss or your supervisor is asking you to do, there's a term out there that says ask 3 before you ask me. Probably wouldn't go that far. I probably wouldn't ask 3 people, maybe 1 or 2 that you can find confidence in and say, hey, you know, our manager asked me to do X, Y, and Z. Not exactly sure what that means or not exactly sure what they're talking about. Is there any way you can kind of help me through that process, right? But again, you don't want to start on a journey if you don't know if you're supposed to turn left or right out of the gate. Learn the company culture. So every single company has what's called culture. Typically, you can discover the company culture based on how they run their meetings, what people wear, the environment, the colors used in the office, if there's cubicles, if there's more of a collaborative feel, if there's just open desks and glass everywhere, you can try to understand what that culture is. And unfortunately, when you work in an office setting, you will most likely have to do more of fitting in initially before you can really kind of let your hair down, right? you will have to understand the culture, because ultimately you want to understand what you could possibly do to not embarrass yourself, but also not offend anyone, right? So for example, I worked in a place where there was a ping pong table in the middle of the office floor, right? By all means, play ping pong in the middle of the day. That doesn't work everywhere, right? I've worked in a place where if you walked in with a suit and tie on, people would look at you very funny. But I've also worked in a place where you had to wear a suit and tie, right? Because that was the culture. Leads me to the next one. Dress for the culture, not for attention. Don't let your outfit speak louder than you. I think that one is self-explanatory, right? I mean, yes, you're going to be you. You're going to be an individual. You're going to be, expressive. But you also want to be careful of people developing preconceived notions about you before you have the ability to speak, right? Before you have the ability to introduce yourself to people, you don't necessarily want your outfit to introduce you to people. Does everybody understand what that means? I think we should talk a little bit more about the dress appropriately thing. What do you think about that, Jillian? What do you think about just dress codes and things like that? Because the term dress code really isn't used as much anymore because a lot of people are working from home, right? So let's talk a little bit about what you wear to work. Jillian, any comments?
I try personally, I try not to show a lot of skin. Nothing too sparkly or loud, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Is that because of the culture that's at your workplace, that you just don't feel like that would be welcomed? Okay. So if you understand the culture, yeah. And listen, guys, nobody's telling you that you can't be yourself. Nobody's telling you that you can't be expressive and you can't be an individual. I think the whole point really is, before you get established at that place, which can sometimes take years, you really don't want to be pigeonholed, right? You don't want to draw unnecessary attention in what can be considered a negative light, right? It's a thin line, right? It's a very thin line, because yes, we know that prejudice and judging people is not right. We understand that, but you will also have to deal with the reality that can't happen, and that can negatively affect how people view you, which can unfortunately affect how people review your results, right? In the tasks that you're given. Practical tip number 2, and then we'll jump into a survey question. If you get an email that makes you angry or a feeling of being attacked, don't respond right away. So I'm actually gonna put Tykea on the spot on this one. Hopefully she's on her P's and Q's on this one, because I know for a fact, working corporate for any length of time, you're gonna get an email that offends you. So for example, what I do when I get an email that offends me, because it definitely happened, is I actually read the email, I click reply, and the next button I click is I turn my Wi-Fi off. You're asking me, why do you turn your Wi-Fi off if you're about to type an email? Because I literally type an entire email the way that I want it to sound, and I clap back at people, but I don't send it. But I have to type it, because if I don't type it, then it's going to be stuck inside of me, right? So before I turn my Wi-Fi back on, just so that I don't accidentally send it, I delete the draft, I take a break, power into pause, and then I proceed throughout my day. So Tykea, are you there?
I am.
Can you give us an example of a time when maybe someone sent you an email that just didn't sit well with you, and what you did?
Yeah, I think, first of all, we have to understand that when we write emails, because we're not face to face, the communication or the tone could come off very, I think it can be different, right? So even when you're writing the email, you could have you can have good intentions, right? But the tone of that email sounds very negative. So I was in a situation where You know, myself and a colleague, you know, we were not on the same page regarding a certain subject that we were talking about. And it was frustrating, right? And that frustration ended up coming across in the email. And then you have to kind of backtrack and say, and this is the same for text messages as well, right?
It's the same,
So
right?
whether it's a tone, whether it's an email or a text message, so if you send that email, you send that text message too fast, then you know you can find yourself having to backtrack. And exactly what I did, I had to backtrack. I had to apologize because my tone wasn't right. So what I've learned to do is to get a second opinion. So when I'm writing an email or I'm writing a text message, I'll ask someone else, you know, that's either in the house or, you know, a coworker to read this and give me some feedback in terms of how they perceive the message. And so I've definitely been the sender of an email or a text message where the tone was not right. But I've learned from that situation, and I love the tip, Mark, where you turn off your Wi-Fi, because you do, when you're in the moment, you do need to get it out. You know, sometimes I'll write it on my notepad, on my phone, just to get all of your feelings out on paper, and then kind of go back, breathe, and then check yourself. Shayla.
That's right. That's right. Shayla, do you have a comment?
I did. This made me think about two things that have been brought up so far. So going back to the, like, sometimes how is it Gen Z? I don't know which, I think I'm Gen Z. Sometimes we lean on technology so much, it kind of interferes with our socialization. For me, sometimes one thing that technology has done for me is made me that instant gratification. So automatically wanting a response or automatically thinking that I have to respond in that moment. But when it comes to the workplace, I found that it's really, especially if you come to a situation like this where you are frustrated or there's like a breakdown in communication, it's really important to take a step back. So ideally you're in a workplace, and I think it's really important too, in the hiring process or whenever you're looking for a job, to ask up front what the culture is in regards to expectations for like response times and communication. Because if you're in an environment where you have to respond back, or the expectation is that you respond back every email within 15 to 20 minutes, well, maybe you don't have time to kind of pause. But ideally, you're in a space where, unless you're like dealing with a project that's time sensitive or something, like maybe you have like a couple hours to respond, or even like 24 hours to respond. So I think that those are two things that I think we should kind of have at the back of our minds too.
That's really good. So let me help you with that just a little bit, right? So here's what I found. This is not by any means anything that's formal, and I found that it applies to me in the situations I've been. But I'm going to give you a guide on response times on different mediums. Okay, instant message, meaning Microsoft Teams, or Slack, anything that's internal communication, instant messaging. That is immediate response. Okay, instant message, immediate response. Text message, 15 to 60 minutes response. I know. If we're talking business, 15 to 60 minutes on a text message response, unless somebody says, I need to know right away, right? 15 to 60. If we're talking internal email, 2 hours. Internal email, 2 hours. If somebody needs a response before that, then they need to instant message you on Slack or Microsoft Teams or whatever your instant message platform is. The reason it's 2 hours is because you also have a job, and the assumption is that you're doing your job. Maybe you're on the phone with clients, maybe you're in the middle of generating reports, doing a presentation, or you're in a meeting. 2 hours is acceptable. External email, so you to a customer, you to a supplier, vendor, whatever, 2 hours to 24 hours, right? I think our minds, just like you said, when we send a message, we just assume somebody's going to send us one right back. Well, the reality is you got to give the person on the other end of the phone, the other end of the keyboard, you got to give them some time to process that. Okay. So as a guide, those are kind of just the in generals. Now, if you send somebody a letter, 30 days, quite literally, right? You send somebody a letter in the mail, it's going to be 30 days before you get a response. It might even be longer. But hopefully you guys aren't using snail mail anymore. So let's lighten it up just a little bit. I'm going to go over to menti.com and I'm going to pose a question. Okay. And then we're going to see your responses. Now, again, we were talking about food earlier, and I think this one is just so practical, right? Name a food that might be inappropriate to order while eating lunch at a restaurant with your boss. I'm also going to throw this one in. A food that it might be inappropriate to eat for lunch in the office. Okay. So at a restaurant or in the office. I already said chicken wings, can't use that one. Got to use a different one. So follow the directions right there at the top of the page, menti.com, use that code, and we'll see our answers generate. And while you guys do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the next one. And I'll put up the slide in a moment. Just I want you to make sure you have, those directions. But there's a chain of command. And you have to understand the chain of command in your office setting. Because what you don't want to do is you never want to jump your boss. You never want to go over your boss's head. Okay? You never want to take an issue and escalate it to the point where you're over your boss's head and your boss doesn't know about it. Unless, and this is the very, very important unless it's an HR issue. If it's an HR issue, then you have to do what you have to do to protect yourself. And sometimes you do have to go over your boss's head, right? Because your boss might be the issue. But I'm talking about just simple matters of everyday office, right? Never express your concern, never express your dissatisfaction to your boss's boss without your boss knowing that that's what you're about to do. This, my friends, can be the kiss of death for your career within an organization. And the tricky part is everybody that's above your boss, whether they're a director, a VP, a C-suite person, are always going to say that I have an open door policy. They're always going to say that you can talk to me, I'm accessible, send me an email. They're always going to say these things. When they say these things, I guarantee you that the people that are under them, they cringe. Because I cringe. I say, oh, please don't, Lord, don't tell them that. And again, that is just a sign of respect to understand the chain of command. If you have an issue, a dissatisfaction, go to your manager first, okay? Express what that is, and then let them know that you would appreciate if they addressed it. If they don't address it, then you say, hey, I'm gonna reach out to such and such. I know we talked about this, but you know what, this is really still bothering me. Didn't seem like it got past you, so unfortunately, I'm gonna go. It's still gonna be a tough conversation, but at least you didn't jump them. You didn't go over their head. Because the worst thing a manager can do is look bad or be embarrassed to their manager, right? So you don't want to embarrass them in front of their manager, just like you don't want to be embarrassed in front of your manager, all right? The better they look, the better you look, because ultimately it's a team. So I'm going to share this slide real quick and we'll jump back into the deck and then we'll look at the responses in a moment after we finish this. All right. There we go. So the better they look, the better you look. It's a team. It's a team effort, right? So what I like to say is you be the star, let them be the sun. Let them be the sun. Again, very, very fine line here. There's going to be opportunities for you to look really good. There's going to be opportunities for you to be what I like to call a rock star at work. But most situations you're going to be in are going to be team oriented. And the better quality work you do, or the better that you make your boss look, the better it is going to be for your career, just to be honest, right? The next one is anticipate adversities. So when you are looking at the chain of command, a lot of times you can see where the breakdown is. You can see from the frontline manager, middle manager, top manager, all the way to the C-suite, you can see where the weakest link is. You can see where that process is going to break down. Because again, all managers aren't leaders, okay? So understanding where that process is going to break down, understanding whose management style might not be up to par will help you anticipate the adversity, right? So if you have to submit a report that you ultimately know that your manager is going to remix and submit to someone else, which, listen, that's what happens, right? If your manager needs to build a PowerPoint presentation to give to the senior management, they're going to ultimately ask you to do a bunch of slides, and then they're going to get it, and they're going to remix it, and then they're going to deliver the deck for the presentation. So you need to be able to anticipate who they're going to give this presentation to, what those people want to see. And again, you want to let them be the star. I'm sorry, you want to let them be the sun and you be the star. The better they look, the better you look, okay? The next one is you want to watch their back. So you want to make sure that when you are interacting with your colleagues and when you're interacting with people that are in your department or outside of your department, that you never, ever, ever talk bad about your manager to someone else, right? And the reason I say this is because everything in corporate America is a boomerang. It will eventually come back. Every email you send, every text message, every conversation, every lunch meeting, every virtual call, it will eventually boomerang back if something negative happens in it. And you never want to be the individual at the center of that conversation. Does that make sense to everyone? Somebody just say yes. All right, let's go back to our poll question. So we say, name a food that might be inappropriate to order while eating lunch at a restaurant with your boss. I can definitely agree with double bourbon on the rocks. I can definitely agree. You probably don't. Well, you know what? Let's go back to that. Greasy burger, for sure. Again, that's a handheld food that will create a mess. Nachos, that is a finger licking, promoting type food that will eventually create a mess. And spaghetti, although may be delicious, is absolutely promoting a mess. Now, real quick, let's talk about this double bourbon on the rocks. This is tricky. This is tricky. There's going to be situations where you are with your colleagues, you're with your team, you might even be with a client, where everybody is drinking alcohol, right? Whether they order a bottle of wine for the table or they ask you what you want to drink, right? Everybody's drinking alcohol. Now, if you don't drink alcohol, then don't drink alcohol, okay? That is just, I think that's pretty normal, right? Like, if you don't drink, don't bend your moral compass just because you are with your boss and your colleagues. Don't jeopardize that. If you do drink, the cautionary tale is, number one drink, and number two, keep it very light. And you gotta kind of know. There are some people that when they have one beverage, guys, they cannot stop talking, and they do what who was it earlier? What Claire told us. They overshare, right? There are some individuals that have one drink and they're like under the table because they're like, this alcohol just does that to them. And you end up in another situation. So again, if you don't drink, don't drink. If you do drink, keep it light. Double bourbon on the rocks probably isn't the best thing, right? Or you can do what I do, bring the server over to you and politely whisper in their ear, bring me a club soda, okay, with a lime on the rocks. Bring me a club soda with a lime on the rocks. Now, what that does is it makes everybody around you think that you are actually having a mixed drink. So nobody asks a question. Hey, you're not drinking today? You're not drinking? It takes away all suspicion, right? It keeps you in the club without actually jeopardizing anything that you might say or do as a result of alcohol. So that's just, again, a practical tip. It may work for you, it may not, but that's what I do. Club soda on the rocks with a slice of lime. Usually nobody asks me any questions, okay? All right, next, let's go here. We gotta put there we go. Okay, this is a good one. 2-minute drill. And we're going to start this time with Cynthia. Cynthia, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Discuss how the job description can actually be different than the actual job responsibilities. Here's what I mean by that, and then we will discuss in a moment. When you are hired, there is a job description. You apply for the job or you get recruited for the job based on the job description. It'll usually include things like building presentations, achieving a certain sales number, so on and so forth. However, when you actually start the job, you realize that there's a lot of things that you're expected to do that don't necessarily fall into that category. So can anyone who currently is working in a corporate setting, or you're working for a manager, can anyone give me an example of something that was never talked about in the interview that you would have to do that is actually a responsibility of yours right now? So we'll start with Cynthia. Hopefully I gave you enough time, Cynthia, to think of something.
Something that comes to my head is I was working in the summer. I was working at a family clinic, and I was working as a receptionist. So the job description was very much just checking in patients, checking out patients, making phone calls, creating schedules. And something that wasn't included in the job description was extra care for patients. So there was times when patients came in for their appointments and did not have rides or a way to get back home. So something that was added to our responsibility was making sure we placed phone calls, even if it was from their insurance or anything like that, to make sure they were getting home. And that was time consuming, and sometimes we had to wait about an hour for their ride to get there.
Wow.
Like that.
Wow. And that's something that obviously was never probably brought up in the interview, right? That it has become a large portion of what you did. This is where, guys, where I talked about the value balance on the first or second slide of the presentation. As you progress in your position, you're going to be asked to do more and more things. As you get better at doing those more and more things, you're going to come to a crossroads or a paradox, shall I say, where the amount of money that you see on your paycheck doesn't necessarily equal what you're doing. Now, that can only happen for so long, right? Because at that point, now you've got the ammunition to say, hey, I think it's time for a promotion. I think it's time for a raise. I think it's time for a title change, right? Because the value balance is not even anymore, and it's not been even for a long time. So that's very good. Thank you so much for sharing that. We'll move on here. Virtual meeting basics. Virtual meeting basics. Listen, guys, it's important. It's very, very important to understand virtual meeting basics because the climate we have experienced for the last 3 years, yes, it's been 3 years, I would say 80% of my meetings are virtual. Before 2020, 80% of my meetings were in person. There's been multiple occasions where I would wake up at 4 a.m., I would fly to New York, I would have a meeting in Manhattan, I would eat lunch with the client, and I would fly home, and I'll be home by 8 p.m. One meeting. That does not happen anymore. Now that meeting is assumed to be virtual. And the reason, obviously, is because we've seen and we proved during COVID that we could still handle business, we could still close deals without showing up personally. I'm just now getting to the point where I'm encouraging myself to have more in-person meetings because I do like in-person meetings, right? And I think we're all kind of virtual meetinged out. However, there are some things that you need to realize. Number one, know how to use your equipment. I'm going to kick this one over to Ange. Ange, what did you help me with when we first got on the call, you, me, and Tykia? What did you help me with earlier today?
We were preparing for the meeting, so we practiced sharing our screen, showing the video, checking the sound, and we did discover an issue, so we had to backtrack and troubleshoot.
That's right. That's right. Know how to use your equipment, right? And given the wisdom of Taikia, who knows how fragile, let's say, these meeting programs can be, Taikia's recommendation is, hey, let's all get on the call 20 minutes before everyone else, and let's make sure that we all know the process, the how to change the screens and how to share the screens and make sure your presentation looks good. That is what I mean when I say know your equipment, right? So definitely know how to use your camera, know how to use your microphone, do a test run if you have to. Just be prepared. The next was always assume your camera is on. I don't care if your camera is off. I don't care if you don't have a camera on your computer. Assume that you are being watched. Okay. Act as if you are being watched. Act as also if your mic is hot. There's been so many times during virtual meetings where people don't realize that they're not on mute and they say something weird, or that they are on mute and they just dropped a huge gem on the whole conversation. They had to answer to all of our problems and nobody heard them. Okay. So assume that your mic is hot and assume that your camera is on. I think we all have stories. One that comes to mind was I was on a monthly marketing call with about 120 people from the organization, and everybody's camera was off except for one person. And this person apparently did not wear clothes when they were in their home. They were sitting at their computer with no clothes on. And 120 people seen this individual with no clothes on. And a lot of those people had to face that person in the office the next day. You know what I mean? Like, it's just weird. So just assume that your camera's always on. Try to use a laptop versus your phone or your tablet. And the reason I say this is because your laptop has to typically sit on your lap or a table, and it's a lot easier to not accidentally press buttons on your laptop than it is on your phone or your tablet, because your phone or obviously your tablet is a giant touch screen. Sometimes you don't know what you touched. I've been on a call once where I was on my phone and I had my earbuds in, and it was only about 7 or 8 people on the call, but I didn't realize that I turned my camera on my iPhone. So all you seen was me like walking through the airport, and the camera was just going like this, and I was making everybody dizzy. And it went on for about 30 seconds before they were like, hey, Mark, turn your camera off. And it was kind of embarrassing, to be honest. And I'm pretty sure it was embarrassing to my manager too, because on that particular call, I was supposed to be the technical expert, and I didn't even realize my camera was on. So learn Team or Zooms. I said that wrong. Learn Teams, Microsoft Teams, and Zoom. Those are the two most prominent virtual meeting applications out there. Both of them you can download on your computer for free, right? And you can do test calls and practice calls. Some organizations are Teams because they're Microsoft oriented. Some organizations are Zoom because they might be Google oriented. Learn both programs because people from outside of your organization are going to send you meeting requests from both platforms, and you should know how to use them. No distracting backgrounds, utilize the blur. I think Ange had her camera on earlier and she was using a blur. That's perfect, right? My background, right? My internet connection isn't very good, so I don't use the blur because it takes up a little more bandwidth. But you can see my background is pretty simple, right? It's just some headphones, a nice little lamp, some pictures of my family, right? It's pretty chill. I got some decent lighting in the room so that you could actually see my face. But you definitely want to make sure that your background is not distracting. You don't want things moving around in your background, right? Because if things are moving around in your background or people are moving around in your background, when you start to talk, those individuals are not going to be looking or paying attention or listening to you. They're going to be looking at your background. They're going to be see all the house and see how big your refrigerator is and all the kind of stuff like that. Pay attention. Don't have a wandering eye. If you are on a call where video is required, know where the lens of the camera is. For example, If everybody can see my face right now, I think you can. I'm reading the slide. So you see my eyes are pitched down, right? I'm reading my screen. My camera is right there. I'm looking at the lens. Now it's a totally different aspect, right? Now I'm actually looking at you. Like you can actually see my eyes and I'm focused on you. Can anybody tell me what I'm doing right now?
We
You
can't
can
see
see
your
my
face.
camera. You can't see my face
No, we
because I'm
don't.
sharing my screen. Okay. All right. We got to do this because we got to do it. We got to do it. Okay. You can see me now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So right now I'm looking at the camera, right? You can literally see my eyes focused on you guys. Now I'm reading the slide. There's an obvious difference between me reading the slide and me looking at the camera. Can anybody tell me what I'm doing right now? What do you think I'm doing right now?
I think you're looking at another, maybe you have double monitors and you're looking at another monitor.
Looking at my phone.
Okay.
Yeah, looking at my phone. But it's obvious that I'm not looking at you, right? It's obvious I'm not looking at the presentation. Or if I do this, you can obviously see that I'm looking past my monitor and I'm focused on something other than the meeting. When I say wandering eyes, you're always going to have people that are on camera that are typing, which tells you that they're either taking notes or they're not paying attention. Or you're going to have people that are on their phone, which also tells you that they're either taking notes or they're not paying attention. Try not to be one of those people because it can be distracting. And depending on who's speaking in the context of the meeting, it can also be considered disrespectful, right? And you never want to fall into that category. So we're going to move it right along here.
Can I also
Alrighty.
add, when we talk about company
Please.
culture, company culture, even in the Zoom space, is important to understand. There's some companies who require you to be on camera for those
right.
reasons that Mark just mentioned, you know, so that everyone can look engaged. And then there's some companies who are fine with you being off camera. I know my daytime job at the National Diversity Council, they're very open and you know, they share often about, you know, no problem not being on camera, so it's fine. So also when you talk about company culture, know what their virtual meeting culture is and come prepared. But however, whether you, like Mark said, whether you're on camera, whether you're not, come as if you have to be on camera because you never know when a question will be thrown to you that
That's right.
may require you to come on camera to answer.
That's right. That's exactly right. And listen, I'm not opposed. I do it all the time, guys. I'm not gonna sit here and say I don't. I'm business on top and I'm party on the bottom. Right? There's times where you might see me in a nice button-down shirt and I'm locked in having my meeting and I got on basketball shorts under the table. I don't plan on standing up. I'll just be honest. Now, that's just the lazy person in me. I probably should put on some dress slacks, but for some reason, you know, when I'm in my house and I have dress slacks on, I also feel like I should have dress shoes on. And I'm, you know, if I'm in my socks, it's kind of a weird scenario. So I try to make sure from the waist up that I look like I'm supposed to be there. That's just real. The next one is use the mute button. Okay. Understand how to use the mute button and make sure that when it is not your turn to speak, that you are muted. You don't know what you're broadcasting, which is like earlier, I did that on purpose. Can you hear my kids? Because I can hear them and they're loud to me, but you can't, right? I didn't know that. There's also scenarios where people are sitting right next to an air conditioner and they don't think that we can hear the air conditioner, but it's the most distracting thing on the call. Or people are driving, or people are, again, in the airport. Use your mute button. Even if you are intensely talking and you're a part of that conversation, it's okay to, on Zoom, press mute, and then every time you want to talk, hold down the space bar, almost like a walkie-talkie. That will temporarily release your mute, but then as soon as you let it go, when you're done talking, you're muted again, right? So again, just make sure that you're utilizing that. Also understand the difference between work from home and a remote employee. Does anybody want to take a guess at the difference between work from home and a remote employee? There is a difference. Anybody want to guess?
How about Cynthia?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I was going to guess remote is maybe another job location or locations where you have to move out and about, and then work from home is being at home working on the computer.
That's actually not too far from the truth, Cynthia. A work from home employee is someone who literally takes their work that they would do in a corporate office and they transport it to their home. You're doing the exact same thing that you can do in the office, you're doing it at home. Typically, a work from home employee has a mandate to sit at their desk and be logged in, right? And be kept track of on Teams or Slack or something like that, where it shows that you are actually at your desk, you're actually working, you're actually logged in, and you have responsibility to either be on the phone or on the computer during the workday. You are a work from home employee. And here's the other 2-year-old. This is, yeah. Hello, Kyla. One moment. Like myself, I'm a remote employee. Okay, so a remote employee is a little different. A remote employee is someone that can do their job anywhere. I can do my job from the airplane. I can do my job from the backseat of somebody's car. I can do my job from the beach. I can do my job from anywhere. As long as I have Wi-Fi, I can do what I need to do. All of my clients are also in different places. So I cover the Americas. I cover North America, South America, when it comes to this particular technology role that I'm in. My clients are everywhere. My expectation as a remote employee is to be wherever my clients are. So I'm on the plane a lot. I'm on the phone a lot. I'm usually never in my home office. And when I am in my home office, it's only for a couple hours at a time. Okay, so that's the difference. Practical tip number 3. Don't participate in workplace gossip. And I'll be right back. I gotta get okay. Sorry for the interruption. Workplace gossip. Everybody knows what gossip means, right? Shayla, everybody knows what gossip means, right? Shayla, you there? How about Claire? Claire, you still there?
Yes.
Give me an example of workplace gossip.
I live in a small town and I work at a small hospital, so hearing what people do and hearing, oh, this person came in here when they were off and was talking to this person turns into, oh, they came in and they were drunk while they were talking to this person for this many hours.
Gossip. Don't get involved in workplace gossip. It's okay to exit a conversation if things get a little gossipy, right? And don't start it either, because again, it never turns into anything positive. Let's just say that. And it boomerangs. It'll always come back. He said, she said. All right, next one. Read the room. Catch the temperature of the room. Okay. And let's see. Shayla is still here. She had to step away. No worries. Catch the mood and the temperature of the meeting as it gets warmed up. Be aware of every person in the room or on the call before you engage. There's Outlook to review invitees and titles. So let's deal with the first couple ones real quick. Catch the mood and the temperature of the room. For example, catch the temperature. This is a meeting that we're in now. It's on a Saturday mid-morning. It's nothing formal, right? It's very relaxed. It's kind of laid back, but there is still a seriousness associated with it, right? So we're not like necessarily cracking a bunch of jokes and just being all over the place. We still have a mission here, but this is not a Monday morning strategy session, so to speak. You want to catch the temperature of the meeting as it gets warmed up so that you can respond accordingly. You also want to be aware of every person on the call before you engage. So Team and Zoom and pretty much every other in-person meeting you have, it's probably going to come over as an invite. On that invite, most times, is going to be everybody who's invited to the meeting, okay? You need to review that before you get on the meeting so that you know who's on the meeting. You never want to walk into a meeting and not know who's supposed to be there or who's actually in the room. You also want to understand your role in every meeting. So my role in this meeting is presenter, okay? You all's role in this meeting is participant. Understand your role and act appropriately. Listen and pay close attention to everyone's perspective, because then again, it may come back up. Hey, what do you think about what Claire said? What do you think about what Jillian said? You want to be understanding of who's saying what. Take notes, limit the side conversations and multitasking. When I say side conversations, I'm saying, hey, if Claire and Cynthia were texting each other right now, that's kind of not looked upon favorably, right? Unless it's related to the meeting and somebody needs to say something or somebody needs some clarity and it's real quick, go ahead and do it. But if you're literally holding an entire conversation that's unrelated while the meeting's going on, or if you're gossiping about a person that's on the meeting, or if you're talking about what somebody didn't do that was supposed to do, that's not looked upon favorably. It can probably wait. Keep an open mind. Disagreements are common. Disagreements in corporate America happen all day, every day. The last thing you want to do is take it personal, and you want to make sure that you understand how to effectively work through disagreements and different perspectives when you're in a meeting, okay? Practical tip number 4, working from home is a privilege, not a right, so work. Pretty self-explanatory. A lot of people abuse the privilege to work from home. And a lot of people don't understand that, again, the value balance can get out of whack pretty quick when you're working from home and you're not actually working. So one of the number one reasons why people get demoted or let go in 2020 through 2022 was that they were supposed to be working from home and they were not able to fulfill those duties. Unfortunately, that's a sad reality. So just work, respect the privilege. Preparation and confidence. Preparation equals confidence. So number 1, be who they hired, right? If you go into an interview and you paint a rosy picture about who you are and what you can do, and then your first day on the job comes and you completely have no clue of what you said in the interview and what you're capable of, and you just sink, that's going to be an issue. On the reverse side, the interview is over. Once you start the job, you don't necessarily have to go over above and beyond to try to impress your boss anymore. You're not there to impress them. At that point, you're there to do the job and to carry out the function of the role at a high level, all right? So when you show up on your first day, you show up during your first week, your first month, act like you're supposed to be there. The interview is over. That leads to, again, we're talking about preparation equaling confidence. You should have confidence, but you will only have confidence if you're prepared. And a lot of preparation comes in self-guided study. So read, whether that's industry magazines, whether that's learning how to do your job better, LinkedIn Learning, those are all good resources to self-guided study. Prepare for your meetings, prepare for your sales calls, prepare for your client calls. That's also essential. And develop personal strategies to complete your tasks. For example, for me, I use an iPad every single day. I use an iPad that has an Apple Pencil, and I write all my notes in my iPad. Because for me, there's something about actually writing my notes versus typing my notes. But I found that using notebooks just leads to a bunch of extra paper and me losing the notes. So I use the program in the iPad with the Apple Pencil to make sure I can categorize and capture all of my thoughts. And we're moving quickly because we're up against time here. Choose your work friends wisely. That's practical tip number 5. Everybody at work, even though they're friendly, is not going to be your friend, right? So choose your work friends wisely. This is the last kind of points slide, but I just want you to be aware that it takes time to become a rock star. It takes time to become a noticed employee. It takes time to be to operate at a high level. And this is the way I look at it. Now, this is gonna vary based on the job and the person. But your first 2 months, you're really trying just to learn the organization. Who's who, what's what, where's the bathroom, where's the lunchroom, how do I make a copy, right? First 2 months. That's the first 60 days, you're learning the organization, the protocols, the process, the culture. The next 2 months, you're actually learning your job. So not until you're 60 days in, most times, do you actually really get into the meat and potatoes of what you're supposed to be doing. And it takes that long to understand what the expectations on you actually are. And it takes that long for you to be able to go to number 3, which is meet expectations. So there's going to be some tests that you do right out of the gate that you're going to meet expectations. There are going to be other tests that you have to practice at, and it may take 90 days for you to actually meet the expectation, and that's okay. Now, at the end of 8 months, or the end of 6 months, now it's time to learn your real job. You know what you're there to do. You're meeting expectations on base level. But what's your real job? Is your real job to move the company number? Is your real job to grow the business? Is your real job to retain clients at a certain level? Shayla, project management. What's your real job? Yeah, it's project management. What's your real job? Why are you really there? It takes time to learn that. And then at the end of, let's say, 10 months, almost a year, you're learning your boss's job. Because ultimately, in order to be successful and not embarrass yourself in front of your boss, you need to know what they do just as well as you know what you do. So when it's time to get promoted or when it's time to make them look like a star, you know exactly what will be required. At the end of the year, you should be able to execute on everything at once. So all of those things, the organization, the protocols, the culture, your job, expectations, your real job, your boss's job, at the end of the year, you should be a rock star if you're operating at a high level. Okay, almost finished here. I think we already talked about this one. Practical tip number 6, if you don't know, stop what you're doing and ask. We definitely talked about that one. And then I want you to drop in the chat real quick, because we are up against time here, what you learned from today's session. Go ahead and drop that in the chat. What did you learn from today's session? And with that, I'm actually going to update the presentation slightly, and I'm going to send it as a PDF to Taikia over the next couple of days for her to distribute, because again, I think this information is practical, and I know we had to kind of scoot along through the last few slides. So I want to make sure that you guys have this for your notes and your records so that you can again refer back to it. So go ahead and drop that in the chat. What did you learn from today's session? And with that, we're all done. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, so let's just kind of go around the room real quick, just for some takeaways. You've got some time to kind of think about it. So Cynthia, if you can come off mic and share what you learned from today's session.
Something that stood out to me was when you were asking the question about what you should not order when you're with your boss or with coworkers or in a setting with people who you work with. I think that's like something really smart, because you can save yourself from a lot of things that might happen. For example, we had a Christmas party and there was drinking involved. And I think many people who maybe have drinking issues or something in the past should have avoided drinking in the first place at the Christmas party, to avoid knocking down a Christmas tree.
Yeah, classic example.
Oh, wow.
Classic. Thanks for bringing that up. Classic. Wow. Christmas party. Gosh, there's movies about that.
Awesome, awesome. Jillian, you want to share with people what you learned? What is your takeaway?
I learned about, I put it in the chat, but like just remaining like really aware of your space. when you're like working from home or remote, specifically like through WebEx and stuff like that. Yeah, I never really thought of it.
Oh, it is a real thing. I am Team Zoom, and I get those meetings that are Team Microsoft Teams, literally. So you got to figure out how to share your screen, how to adjust your volume, all of that. So great. Claire, you want to share your?
Hey, word to the wise. If your company is still using WebEx, they are technologically behind the 8 ball. Okay, so when it comes to the expectations of the organization from a technology standpoint, if they're still using WebEx, that should tell you a lot. Okay. Just because WebEx is, honestly, guys, WebEx is terrible. I'll be honest with you, it's terrible.
Right.
I didn't see it. It's bad. But anyway, thank you for sharing that.
All right, Claire, and then Shayla.
Okay. Being successful depends just as much on your inter-office relationships as it does with your own performance.
That's good, Claire.
Absolutely.
That's good. Yeah.
And lastly, Shayla.
Excuse me. I'm going to adopt the Rockstar timeline for my own personal metrics, and the learning the behavioral tendencies of your managers was really good too. That's something that I'm going to read more about following this conversation. So thanks.
Good. Shayla, you know, it takes time, right? So a lot of times what we see, especially in this generation, is that the average time that someone stays on a job is 2 years, right? That is down from like 4 years, 5 years in like 2015, 2016. People are leaving jobs a lot sooner now because they don't understand the timeline and they're looking to get promoted 6 to 8 months into the job. Yes, you did a great job. You're doing wonderful. But the reality is, what are you really there to do? And the sooner you can figure that out, the sooner you figure out what your boss's responsibilities are, how to make them look good, the better you're going to be. So that's really good. Thank you for sharing that.
Awesome. We'll drop in the chat your appreciation for Mark for delivering the session this morning. Thank you again so much. Remember to record or track your hours that you're meeting up with your mentor. If your mentor has you to connect with someone else, track those hours as well. At the end of the program, we will request the number of hours that you met with your mentor and those in their networks. If you go to different meetings, track those hours as well. Our next session will be on February 24th, and it will be Leading Courageous Conversations. And the presenter will be Kwame Christian. So this is going to be another session that you will not want to miss. And I will send out some emails and calendar invites for this session. Kwame is also an Amazon best-selling author. So we'll make sure that you get his book as well. Did you all get Ron's book in the mail from last session? Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Yay, Mark got one as well. Yay. Fantastic. It's all about building the network. I was so excited. All right, everyone. Won't keep you any longer. Have a wonderful weekend. And thank you for your time and your commitment to not only Right Choice, but to yourself. Happy Black History Month. And have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye, Zakia.